The Thargok war campus loomed like a wound on the red plains of Gorsha, a brutalist maze of stone, steel, and heat where lesser species were forged into soldiers or broken trying. Humans were a curiosity here, their presence tolerated more than respected. In truth, they were outnumbered, underestimated, and often mocked. And none more so than Cadet Mira Dalton. She stood at the edge of the training field, her slight frame in stark contrast to the towering, scale-plated Thargok recruits drilling nearby. Where they moved with the weight of brute strength, Mira shifted with coiled patience, eyes always observing, always calculating. Her uniform was regulation black, but she wore it with a precision that made even the sloppiest alien sergeant second-guess barking at her. Today was close-quarters sparring. The kind of exercise the Thargok adored, not for its utility, but for the excuse it gave to bleed something. The matchups were usually randomized, but when Myra's name was drawn against Cadet Gorval, a young Thargok noble nearly 3 times her size, no one believed it was by chance. A ring of spectators formed quickly. The murmurs weren't even hushed. "They sent a human girl?" someone snorted.
"No."
"A souvenir from Earth." Another joked, laughing. Gorval grinned, wide and toothy, the ceremonial crest on his collar shaking as he stepped forward. His claws were filed dull by academy rules, but the muscles rippling under his carapace were anything but dulled. Mira didn't flinch. She bowed slightly, the way she'd been trained. Respect was never a sign of weakness unless you needed it to be. "Begin," barked the drill master. Gorval didn't hesitate. He lunged not to test but to dominate. Mira sidestepped, his weight crashing into the dust where she'd stood. She struck a sharp jab under his arm as he passed. It wouldn't hurt, but it got his attention. He turned slower this time, now curious. "You are fast," he said in his deep, gravelly voice, but still soft. He closed the distance and, with a casual backhand, struck Mira across the face. The sound was sharp and obscene. The crowd quieted. She staggered, knees dipping, but she didn't fall. Her cheek was blooming red already, her lips split. Mira reached up slowly, touching the blood with 2 fingers. Then she looked at him, not in fear, but with something colder. "You shouldn't have done that," she said softly. The Thargok cadets laughed again, but it was nervous now. Gorval stepped forward, about to speak, when Mira raised a single hand. "I invoke Challenge Protocol 17. The laughter died immediately. Even the drill master hesitated. "You what?" Gorval asked, the grin slipping slightly. "I challenge the right of status. Forfeit through physical contest. 5 minutes. No weapons. If I win, I take your sponsor's honor medal." Whispers rippled outward like shockwaves. The honor medal wasn't a cadet's trinket. It was a symbol of lineage and glory, worn by General Urak himself. For a mere human to invoke such a challenge was unthinkable. "You are not Thargok," the drill master growled. "That code is for blooded houses. It applies to any cadet recognized by the Interstellar Alliance Accords," Mira replied, voice crisp and low, "which this academy ratified 5 years ago." A pause. Then the drill master looked toward the looming balcony that oversaw the arena. A hulking silhouette stood there, silent and unmoving. General Urak, eyes like dull suns, watching. A slow nod came from the balcony. Permission granted. Mira didn't smile. She didn't need to. She simply turned, walked to the center of the arena, and waited. Gorval stared at her, fists twitching with disbelief. "You won't survive 2 minutes." She met his gaze without blinking. "I don't need 5. The crowd began to shift, drawing closer to the railings. Betting pools were whispered into motion. A few human cadets in the back looked visibly ill. No one had ever won such a challenge, certainly not a human. Myra's blood was still running down her chin, but her stance was unshaken.
Poised.
Balanced. Time was called. And somewhere deep in the sand of the arena, the weight of assumption began to crack. The match would begin at sunrise. But the war for respect had just been declared. The arena floor shimmered under the twin suns, a field of cracked ochre dust framed by monolithic statues of past Thargok champions. Mira stood alone at the center, her shadow short and sharp. Across from her, Gorval waited with his arms crossed, jaw twitching in silent anticipation. 1,000 eyes watched from the stadium tiers, their chatter like the low hiss of a coming storm. A horn sounded. The timer began. Gorval surged forward like a battering ram, faster than his bulk should have allowed. Mira didn't dodge. She pivoted. His swipe carved air where she'd been, and she slipped behind him, planted her boot, and drove an elbow into the back of his knee. He stumbled barely, but it was enough to draw murmurs from the crowd. She didn't press the attack.
Not yet.
1 minute passed. Gorval's grin had vanished. He circled her now, less predator, more calculating. Myra's eyes were half-lidded, her breaths even, her stance loose. It was the stillness of deep waters. Dangerous waters. Gorval feinted left, then slammed his shoulder into her. She flew back, tumbling through dust, but landed crouched. Blood lined her temple. He laughed, teeth flashing. That all?
She didn't respond.
She watched. 2 minutes. Gorval rushed again. Mira let him. At the last second, she ducked, grabbed the ridge under his plated ribs, and used his own momentum to pull him forward, then twisted, driving his face into the dirt. The impact echoed. The arena gasped. Gorval rose with a snarl, bleeding from the nose. His eyes were livid now. Mira circled him like a dancer, calculating the angles, waiting for the next opening. Her mind didn't scream with pain. It catalogued. Microfracture in her forearm, mild concussion symptoms, bruised ribs, tolerable. 3 minutes. He charged again, swinging wide, reckless with rage. Mira rolled beneath the arc, came up inside his reach, and delivered 3 rapid strikes to his solar plexus. Not punches, precision hits. The kind designed to bypass muscle and confuse the nervous system. Gorval staggered, then retaliated with a back fist that caught her shoulder and sent her skidding sideways. Still, she rose. "Your bones must be made of iron," he growled. "No," she replied, voice steady. "Just tested harder than yours." His eyes narrowed. The crowd had grown quiet. The betting pools shifted. Even the drill master leaned forward. 4 minutes. Myra's stance changed now. More aggressive. She stepped in, threw a feint high, then swept his legs. Gorval fell. Not heavily, but enough. She vaulted onto his back, striking behind his ear ridge. He flailed, but she was already gone, rolling clear. He roared, voice guttural with frustration. He lunged, slower now, and Mira caught his arm, shifted her weight, and used his size against him. He hit the ground with a thud that cracked the arena floor. Dust plumed upward. She didn't go for the final blow.
Not yet.
For minutes, 30 seconds. Gorval was on his knees, panting, swaying. Mira stood over him, bloodied, breathing like she'd just finished a warm-up run. She looked toward the balcony. General Urak had not moved, but his grip on the railing had tightened. "Do it," Gorval snarled. "Finish it." She tilted her head. "You're done. You just don't know it yet." He lunged once more, a final burst of fury. Mira met him halfway, sidestepped, and drove her elbow into the base of his skull. His momentum carried him forward, but his body gave out. He collapsed, face first into the dirt. 5 minutes. Silence. The horn sounded again, long and low. Mira turned, walked toward the edge of the arena. And then, before the stunned crowd, she ascended the stone steps to where General Urak stood. The Thargok commander watched her with unreadable eyes. She stood before him, body bruised, uniform torn, chin lifted. For a moment neither moved. Then she extended her hand. Urak glanced at the empty space on his chest where the honor medal rested. Slowly, he unclipped it and placed it in her palm. "You dishonor no one," he said, voice like grinding metal. "Today, you shamed arrogance." Mira nodded once. No smile. No gloating. She turned, descended the stairs, and past the stunned crowd with the medal clenched in one hand and her silence as her shield. The Academy would never look at humans the same again. Not after this. The medbay lights were soft and sterile, humming faintly as Mira sat motionless on the examination table. Dried blood streaked her temple, and purple bruises were blossoming along her ribs. A Thargoc medic approached, hesitant, unsure if she required assistance, or if touching her would be a diplomatic offense now. "I'm fine," she said without looking up. The medic nodded and backed away. Even the medics were cautious now. Outside, the Academy buzzed in an uneasy silence. No one quite knew what came next. The challenge protocol had been followed to the letter, the honor medal had changed hands publicly, and Cadet Gorval remained unconscious under medical supervision. The hierarchy had been ruptured, and Mira had become the fault line. By dusk, she was summoned to the Hall of Accord. The council chamber felt colder than the arena. Alien officers of varying species filled the Ark, each wearing the insignia of war, diplomacy, or science. General Urak stood at the center, flanked by 2 Thargoc elite guards. Mira entered alone, the medal in one hand, her posture straight despite the ache in her joints. "You've thrown this institution into chaos," one of the counselors said. He was Athonian, skeletal and tall, his voice like glass splintering. "I followed the rules," Mira replied evenly. "Rules humans weren't meant to understand," muttered a Cernari admiral. General Urak raised a hand. The chamber silenced. "She beat one of our own," he said. "Not with brute strength. With control. Precision. She earned what she claimed." Another voice chimed in, this one softer. A human liaison officer. "The question isn't whether she won. It's what this means." The council debated for an hour, voices rising and falling in sharp tongues and murmured dialects. Mira listened, but did not speak. She already knew what it meant. It meant fear. And fear in a military culture had 2 outcomes, reform or retaliation. When the deliberations ended, Urak turned to her. "You may keep the medal," he said, "but you will return it with your own insignia, as tradition demands." Mira stepped forward and placed the medal on the central plinth. From her pocket, she produced a cloth-wrapped patch and placed it atop the medal. The patch bore the mark of a human unit, black triangle, silver edge, a single white line running through its center. "I was told we were here to be tested," she said quietly. "We came in peace. You mistook that for weakness. You demanded strength. Now you've seen it." The silence was colder than any judgment. She turned and walked out, leaving the patch and the medal behind. Back in the dormitory, Mira found her bunk stripped. Not in punishment, but in quiet deference. Her belongings had been packed neatly beside her bed. On her pillow was a note, written in Thargoc glyphs, but unmistakably clear. "You are not one of us, but you are not beneath us." She left the room without a word. The next day, new training schedules were posted. Human cadets had been reassigned, not to menial tasks or diplomatic duties, but to joint tactical drills, combat scenarios, and high-level strategy sessions. Some protested. Others fell silent. A few watched Mira pass in the halls and saluted, unsure why they did it, only that it felt appropriate. Rumors bloomed in the shadows like mold. That Mira wasn't just a cadet, but a test case. That Earth had sent someone like her not to represent humanity, but to measure the galaxy's readiness. That other humans like her existed, and they were watching. Inside the Thargoc command tower, General Urak recorded a private log. "She did not fight with rage," he said slowly. "She fought with patience, with knowledge. She understood our weaknesses before we understood her presence. We believed ourselves masters of strength. But perhaps true power lies not in muscle, but in mastery of self." He paused, then added quietly, "This war campus has trained generations. But today we were taught." By week's end, 3 alien cadets requested transfer to Earth's combat program. Mira declined interviews, honors, and ceremonies. She requested a field reassignment to return to Earth. Her request was granted without delay. As she boarded the shuttle, Gorval watched from a distance. His face was marked by healing fractures, but his expression held no malice. Just something older. Respect.
She didn't wave.
He didn't nod. But the understanding passed between them like gravity, unseen, undeniable. The ramp closed. Engines roared. And Cadet Mira Dalton left behind not a legacy, but a challenge. What if the most underestimated species in the galaxy wasn't just capable of fighting back, but of leading?